Hello YouTube, it's me, Josh from the Average Josh Podcast, coming back at you again with another video. And today we're going to be discussing the take back, or should I say the takeover, Teofimo Lopez versus Pedro Campa fight. And this is basically my reaction to that fight. I think that Teofimo Lopez went out there and did everything that I expected him to do. If you look at the last video I made about the prediction to the fight, I said that I expected Teofimo Lopez to get an 8th round knockout and to look good in the fight as long as he respected Pedro Campa and was willing to go in there, take his time and respect Pedro Campa as an actual professional fighter, which he did. Now, I did have some apprehensions about, from the press conference and everything that we saw leading up to the fight. It did seem like Teofimo Lopez was looking over Pedro Campa, which is a bad thing to do when you're moving up in weight, fighting a guy who's bigger than the guys that you're usually accustomed to, and you're trying to get accustomed to a new weight division. But it didn't seem to do that. He didn't go in there just swinging wildly, trying to have an instant one-punch knockout. What he did was, he was patient, he let the fight come to him, and he broke Pedro Campa down over time. And as Pedro Campa started to feel more of his punches, and the worse Pedro Campa's condition came, the better and better and better Teofimo started to look. Now, initially when he came into the fight, he was utilizing his signature defense, his Philly shell, shoulder roll type of defense that you often see people like Floyd Mayweather use. And honestly, I don't really think that that's the best style of defense for him, essentially, especially when you look at how Pedro Campa was coming in and having a little bit of success initially when he was using that defense. Now, someone like Floyd Mayweather, he would start out by, not using that flashy defense in the beginning of the fight, getting his opponent's timing down, and as he got his opponent's timing down, he would gradually work himself into that defense. But I do say that I've seen Teofimo Lopez use a similar style of defense against other fighters. You can tell that he's really a student of Floyd Mayweather because he uses a lot of Floyd Mayweather's tricks like the pull counter. But I will say this, even though Pedro Campa isn't the best fighter, even at this type of level of opponent, I've never seen Teofimo Lopez use his shoulder roll as buttery smooth and to the extent that he was able to do during the middle of the fight. Teofimo Lopez was in there just dodging the punches like they were nothing, countering Pedro Campa like it was nothing. He was really starting to establish himself and show that he has improved as a fighter. It's the loss to George Kambosos. He went in there, he was patient, he respected Pedro Campa as a professional fighter, and he utilized his boxing IQ to not only beat Pedro Campa up and stop him, but actually give Pedro Campa a significant boxing lesson. And I think that's what Teofimo Lopez is going to have to do. These guys at 140 are not just going to be knocked out with one punch like the guys at 135. It's just not going to happen. And Teofimo Lopez looked really good at 140. He looked like he still has his power at 140. But like I said, where he doesn't have such a significant size advantage, you're going to see that it's going to be a little bit harder to knock these guys out than it was at 135. You see him struggle with some bigger guys at 135 like Nakatani, but I would say that this version of Teofimo Lopez that showed up against Pedro Campa is a better version of the Teofimo Lopez, has better footwork and is better at utilizing his jab and has started to master his shoulder roll defense more than the version of him that fought Nakatani. So just like I said, when Blair Cobbs made those incremental improvements to be able to beat Maurice Hooker, we all expected Teofimo Lopez to go in there and beat up Pedro Campa, but it does show that he did make incremental improvements to become a better fighter. And honestly, now I'm really excited to see what's going to happen in the junior welterweight division. We have Teofimo Lopez in there. You have Regis Prograis, Josh Taylor, Jose Ramirez, so many great fighters. Ryan Garcia as well. So many great fighters are at the junior welterweight division that honestly to me is starting to become a glamour division just with all the competition that it has. And not only that, you have guys like Devin Haney who, if he gets past George Kambosos, which, come on, everybody knows he will, and if he's managed to get past Lomachenko, which that's going to be a hard challenge, but he may very well beat Lomachenko as well. Being a guy at his size, being 5'9", and really draining himself down to fit into the 135 weight class, it won't be too much longer before we see Devin Haney at 140 as well. And then hopefully Teofimo Lopez stops calling him the email champion. Hopefully he wants to get his redemption back, which I really think he does want to get his redemption back, and he goes straight for a Devin Haney fight, and we can see what that's like. Also, after the fight, we saw that they're really pushing Teofimo Lopez to fight Ryan Garcia. So the Golden Boy Oscar De La Hoya, he was actually there at the fight, since we can really tell that they're pushing that Ryan Garcia fight. Also, when they asked Teofimo Lopez about Ryan Garcia, it seemed as like he was more interested in getting the belts. He was undisputed, even though some people question his undisputed status at 135, but you know, he was undisputed at 135. Then he lost all his belts. So right now, as the take back, you can really see he's looking for that redemption. He's looking to really get all those belts back, get back to the top of the division, become undisputed without that franchise nonsense, and really establish himself as this great fighter. He wants to be remembered as one of the greats. He has a big ego. He's kind of an a-hole, so he wants to be remembered as one of the greats, like Floyd Mayweather. He wants to make the big money, and he wants to be on top of boxing. And honestly, just to do my best impression of one of his idols, Mike Tyson, I would say that the fight was beautiful, it was ferocious, it was exceptional, it was amazing, because he just went in there and he did what he was supposed to do. He didn't make a lot of mistakes, and he took his ego down 20%, and he came in there actually utilizing his boxing skills, and he showed that he did improve his defense and his jab and his footwork, and he looked really good against Pedro Campa. Also, on a side note, so during the lead up to this fight, when I was actually watching the fight, I saw some of the interviews that they had with Teofimo Lopez about his loss to George Kambosos, and he said that during that loss to George Kambosos, that when he had lost the weight and he was going in to rehydrate, he was drinking water, and there was a tear in his esophagus, which caused some air to get into his body. I think he said it was his lungs, which really affected the way that he was able to fight George Kambosos. Also, I think that combined with the fact that he seemed to somewhat overlook George Kambosos, and he was just going in there for a quick knockout, really did affect his performance. But now that you see that he's past that, he's really becoming more of a more well-rounded, good, better fighter than even he was at 135, and he was an excellent fighter at 135, and he showed excellent boxing IQ when he fought Vasily Lomachenko. But then he seemed to throw that boxing IQ out the window due to partially what I believe is his ego when he was fighting George Kambosos. But the one thing that I did not like about that interview is that they were talking about Teofimo Lopez's personal life. So the interviewer was asking Teofimo Lopez about, you know, the things that he was going through with his significant other, his wife at the time, and you could tell he really didn't want to talk about it. He basically said, asked him like, well, aren't you a single dad now? And he's all like, who said that I was a single dad? And he's like, well, do you get to spend as much time as you like with your son? And the dude literally looked like he was about to cry, and he was all like, well, not as much as I would like to. And also, he said that there was a point in his life leading up to that fight when he was having some of those issues that he really thought about, you know, ending himself. Self-deletion, as they would say. And I don't like stuff like that. Honestly, I get that we live in a society and the interviewer's job is to press for those hard, tough questions that everybody wants to answer, but boxing is just a sport. You don't need to sit around there, and you can see that the man obviously didn't want to talk about this. You can see that the man is obviously having trouble with this, and you're still pressing it for entertainment value. Because although Teofimo Lopez is arrogant, although Teofimo Lopez has a big head, although Teofimo Lopez spouts off at the mouth, although Teofimo Lopez can be an a-hole, although Teofimo Lopez talks down to other fighters, he has a lot of flaws, but he's still a human being. And to constantly bring up and prod about his relationship and about the things that are going on in his life and all this stuff, and you can see it definitely bothers him, I don't think that that's necessarily right. Kick someone while they're down for the entertainment value of other people, because essentially it just makes it worse, because people are going to see it, people are going to talk about it, people who don't like Teofimo Lopez are going to go out of their way to bring it up in like the comment sections, to bring it up on his wife's social media, and I think she deleted her Instagram, and it's just going to exacerbate the problem and make it worse. And at the end of the day, we're all human beings, we all have flaws, we all have our own issues, and I think that we should keep sport and kind of not like screw people over in this way to make a quick buck or to hype up a fight. But that's just my opinion on it. You can have whatever opinion you want on it. Now, another thing that I saw about that fight is I don't know if having your hands down and doing that shoulder roll type of thing is really the best way to go about fighting people like Josh Taylor or Regis Prograde. Better boxers are gonna really exploit that if he goes in there and he fights like that. I think that he did that in this fight because, you know, obviously Pedro Campa isn't the best fighter, and he also said he only had 2 weeks of sparring versus his 4 weeks of sparring that he would normally have against the better fighter. So the only thing that's really keeping Teofimo Lopez from becoming that great fighter, to me personally, is just his own ego. And if he's willing to put his ego down and continue to make these incremental increases, he could very well be the best junior welterweight in the world, and only time would tell. But for right now, the one thing I can say is that watching that fight, it was exciting. I really love to see Teofimo Lopez out there looking good. I really love that he's back in the mix. I really love that he's back on his bull stuff, talking his shit. I really loved all of that. So with that being said, I really enjoyed the fight. I saw Teofimo Lopez win. I predicted Teofimo Lopez would win in the 8th round. He got Pedro Campa out there in the 7th round. He looked good. He improved on his defense. And that's all I really have to say about that. I'm out. Yeah, you know what? I really didn't like that interview. It definitely left a bad taste in my mouth. So I'm gonna go show Teofimo Lopez some love, man. We ain't trying to see nobody self-delete out here, man. So if anybody sees this, go on Teofimo Lopez's Instagram page and just give him a positive comment. Let's give him some positivity to go against the negativity, man. Spam the praying hands, bruh.